A single eye widens in shock and disbelief. A young girl awakens on the cold, hard ground. She sits up, dirty and disoriented, wondering where she is. From the darkness of an alley, she looks out, at a world that seems to have forgotten she exists. Then, a voice calls out a name she seems to recognize. Frim. A young boy stands before her, asking if she's all right. He introduces himself simply as Pacus. Frim is stunned, a hand flying to her mouth in shock, because she knows him, and she knows he's a character with a part to play. Pacus looks on with concern, asking her what's wrong. He then smiles, relieved that she's finally able to speak. He asks if she remembers being attacked by their older brother, but Frim's mind is already drifting back to a time before this. She recalls a past life, one where she was a woman from Japan, a quiet researcher living a perfectly ordinary existence. Her days were simple and repetitive, with nothing out of the ordinary. One evening, she stopped at a department store on her way home, and as she rode the escalator, something suddenly went wrong. A final, fleeting memory before her world faded to black. A child had slipped, tumbling down the escalator right towards her. She registered the danger in an instant, and her body moved on its own, reaching out to help. She caught the boy, shielding him with her own body as they fell. The sound of the impact was sharp and final. She recalls hitting her head on the floor, and the thought that this was the end. Her memories should have stopped there, but instead, another set began. The life of the researcher was now mixed with the memories of this girl, Frim. Pacus snaps her out of it, telling her it's time to go to work. And she knows exactly who they work for, the son of a powerful Mafia boss. She knows the original Frim was seen as timid and utterly useless, and their work was a simple, desperate hustle. They sell water on the streets of a bustling city. Pacus shouts to the crowd, trying to draw in customers, but the onlookers are skeptical, questioning what kind of water it is. In a marketplace full of vendors, their small operation is easily overlooked. Yet those who try it are amazed, eagerly asking for more. And the source of this seemingly magical water is Frim's own innate ability to conjure it from thin air. This is her role, to provide the product that keeps them alive. But Pacus doesn't seem to understand the scam he's running. All he knows is that Frim's water is what earns them their keep for the day. Yet their reward for a hard day's work is just a meager meal and 2 coins. Frim realizes with a sinking feeling that most of their money is being skimmed. Everything they earn is handed over to the men who exploit them. The crushing reality of her new life finally hits her. This world, she thinks, is a truly cruel place. Pacus notices her distress, asking what's on her mind, but she simply tells him that it's nothing at all. Staring out into the rain, she steels her resolve for what's to come. She recalls their miserable nights, sleeping on rooftops in the pouring rain. Whether this is a dream or reality, she knows she has no choice but to survive. Their days are a brutal cycle of being woken up, fed scraps, and put to work. This world is primitive, with living conditions that are utterly squalid. She was abandoned by her parents, becoming a street urchin for a criminal syndicate. And while magic is common here, her ability to create pure water is incredibly rare. Even she is surprised by her own proficiency, realizing just how valuable her power truly is. It's because of this power that she's being used, forced to obey every command from Pacus without question. But she also remembers that their boss's men, who praise them now, will eventually betray them. She realizes that this world is rotten to its very core. Day after day, she's forced to fill their jars while Pacus barks orders. Her hands conjure streams of pure, clean water, a stark contrast to the filth around them. Yet, she finds a strange, simple joy in the act of creation itself. But that small moment of peace is about to be shattered. Pacus grabs her by the hair, violently demanding she work faster. One of the men surprisingly steps in, telling the boy he's gone too far. Pacus freezes, his eyes widening with a dangerous glint. Frim simply stands there, accustomed to the cruelty, because she knows what happens to those who dare to defy Pacus. She watches him, her mind racing. She's truly starting to hate this life. She knows that if things continue like this, they'll never get out, and a new resolve hardens in her eyes. Later, Pacus calls for her to hurry up, but turns to find her collapsed on the ground. She weakly tells him that she's too hungry to move. He reminds her that she ate her usual portion. Through tears, she explains that she's a growing girl and needs more food. Pacus seems to consider this, falling silent. But her plea for more food is met with a violent shove. He explodes in a fit of rage, accusing her of messing with him. He screams that if she doesn't do her part, then he won't get paid. But beneath the anger, there's a flicker of genuine panic in his eyes. Frim realizes her small act of rebellion has completely failed. Yet she knows her true plan is still very much in motion. A few days later, they're led through the streets by one of the syndicate's men. The man smirks, commenting on how frail and close to death Frim appears. But Frim knows today is the day she'll be providing water directly for the boss himself. They arrive at a heavily guarded room as the boss is paranoid about being poisoned. She swallows hard, steeling herself for what comes next. Because if she's ever going to seize an opportunity, it has to be now. The boss looks down at her, a hint of curiosity in his eyes. He recognizes her name, lounging in his chair with an air of authority. She stands before him, small and frail in his imposing presence. He compliments her water, recalling how good the last batch was. But his praise does little to calm her nerves. The man is terrifying. He thanks her curtly, telling her to do her job so they can leave. He points to a large jar, ordering her to fill it with her water. But as she looks closer, she notices the inside is filthy and slimy. Taking a deep breath, she speaks up, and the boss asks what she wants. She innocently points out that the jar is dirty, asking if he's sure he wants her to fill it. A dark shadow falls over her as the boss's mood instantly sours. He looms over her, his patience clearly worn thin by her comment. His hand clenches into a fist, and for a moment she thinks it's over. But he turns, grabbing one of his underlings instead. The boss demands to know if the man washed the water jar as instructed. The subordinate stammers, feigning ignorance with a nervous smile. His excuse is met with a swift and brutal punch from the enraged boss. Frim watches in terror as the boss screams that he has no use for men who can't follow his orders. He screams that the man is nothing but trash, and orders the others to drag the useless subordinate away. The boss grumbles in frustration, leaving the mess to be cleaned up. But then he turns back to Frim, his tone completely changed as he thanks her for noticing. She stammers, unsure how to respond to his sudden gratitude. She quickly apologizes, explaining that she's just too nervous to speak properly. He looks down at her, confused by her apology. He then asks about the money he gave her for food a few days ago. She explains that her older brother Pacus stole it from her. And with that one simple lie, her true plan is finally set in motion. She remains on the floor, her head bowed low. The boss considers her words, a thoughtful expression on his face. He gestures to a new clean jar, telling her to get to work. But then he tells her to come see him once she's finished. To her utter shock, he offers her a plate of food from his own table. Overwhelmed by the gesture, she bows her head in gratitude. He watches her small form, his expression unreadable. And just as she planned, her visits to the boss became more and more frequent. With his protection, the abuse from Pacus and the other men began to lessen. She thanks him, still terrified but knowing her plan is working perfectly. She notes with satisfaction that her quality of life is finally improving. Though she still has to sell water under Pacus's watchful eye, she uses her delivery runs to inns and apothecaries to gather information. With every trip, she learns more about this strange new world. Her goal is to slowly gather knowledge and increase her own value. One day, she's brought to a different room where the boss is waiting. He seems a bit surprised to see her there, looking down with a curious expression. But she knows that to truly escape this life, she has to take another, even bigger risk. She offers to help him count his money, a task he casually agrees to. The boss looks down at her, skeptical of her bold claim. His men laugh, doubting that a mere child could handle such a task. But the boss silences them, telling Frim to go ahead and prove herself. She knows that within this syndicate, only the boss is truly literate and numerate. And if she can prove herself useful, she might be given more important tasks. But as she looks at the pile, she realizes the currency is far more complex than she imagined. The boss asks what's wrong, and she panics, knowing nothing about this world's monetary system. She quickly tries to recover, asking for clarification on how to sort them. Then an idea sparks, and she asks if she can try something a little different. He agrees, but warns her not to push her luck. Frim suggests they ignore the total value for now. Instead, she offers to show him how she can be useful. She remembers her past life, where she studied economics. Money, she thinks, is her true area of expertise. And with that realization, she knows she can do this. The boss looks at the newly sorted piles, asking how she did it. She explains that she sorted the coins of the same type, by their condition, from clean to dirty, and then arranged them into stacks of 10 to make counting easier. The boss listens intently, a flicker of interest in his eyes. The boss smirks, realizing that this small child might actually be useful. One of his men tries to interject but is quickly silenced with a casual threat. The boss leans in close, demanding to know where she learned such a skill. Frim quickly comes up with a lie, claiming she learned it helping at a market stall. He seems to accept her story, mulling over this new development. Then he makes a decision. From now on, Frim will be helping him directly. She can barely contain her joy as he asks what he should tell Pacus. The boss dismisses her brother as a trivial matter he'll handle himself. Frim realizes with a jolt of excitement that she's taken her first real step forward. The boss looks down, considering her new position within his organization. She speaks up, getting the boss's attention. He points a finger at her, warning her to stop licking the coins. She explains that some metals can be poisonous, a fact that seems to shock him. The boss's eyes narrow as he considers the implications of her words. He looks down at her, a new idea forming in his mind. He then makes a declaration. From now on, she will work for him. Frim is stunned, unsure if this is a good or a bad thing, but she quickly realizes it's a far better fate than staying with Pacus. And with that, she's given her own room for the very first time. Lying on a real bed with new clothes, she finally feels a sense of security. The boss tells her that from now on, she won't have to suffer out in the rain. He then asks her how much she was actually paid for her work each day. She quietly admits it was only 2 copper coins, which is far less than he was told. The boss realizes with dawning fury that his men have been skimming most of her earnings. He sighs in frustration, lamenting the incompetence of his own subordinates. He decides that from now on she will stay by his side and they'll sell the water from here. Frim can barely contain her excitement, seeing this as her big break. This, she thinks, is the perfect chance to prove her worth directly to the boss. She immediately offers to take on cleaning duties to make herself even more useful. He casually agrees and she thanks him, her plan falling perfectly into place. She immediately sets off, determined to tackle something that's been bothering her. Her first target is the hideout's filthy outhouse. She carefully makes her way down the slippery outdoor steps, knowing this is her chance. After a quick check to make sure no one is watching, she takes a deep breath and focuses her power. Unleashing a torrent of water like a high-pressure hose, she puts all of her concentration into the blast. The sheer force of the water scours the area clean in an instant. But the recoil is far stronger than she anticipated, sending her flying backward. She lands on the wet ground, stunned by the raw power she just unleashed. She realizes that with a little more practice, she can control this power. Just then, the boss's men come looking for her, wondering where she went. The boss himself appears, demanding his subordinates find Frim at once. But his anger quickly turns to stunned disbelief. He sees his men have been completely soaked by a powerful blast of water. Frim looks up, realizing she's been caught in the act. She quickly explains that she was just cleaning the hallway in the outhouse. The boss looks down at her, a strange, unreadable expression on his face. She proudly runs off, promising to do whatever she can to help him. He gently pats her head, warning her not to do anything so dangerous again. He announces that it's time to eat, and Frim happily follows along. She beams, confident that her knowledge and magic will ensure her survival. The boss reflects on his strange new subordinate, a thoughtful look on his face. He remembers her unusual hair color, glad he decided to take a chance on her. Sometime later, he asks a woman where the kid who was with Pacus has gone. The woman seems confused, not realizing that Frim was the new subordinate Pacus mentioned. She recalls Pacus drunkenly celebrating his new recruit, completely unaware of the change. The boss considers this, feeling a little bad that he ended up taking the girl from him. But as he takes a sip from his cup, he knows he made the right choice. The next morning, a large man asks Frim if the gambling den has been losing customers. She worries that she's about to do something that will displease the boss. The man explains that a rival Mafia group has opened a new gambling den, stealing their customers. The boss strokes his chin, pondering this new problem. He suddenly turns to Frim, asking if she has any ideas, which catches her completely off guard. She panics, realizing that a child offering so many complex ideas is highly suspicious. So she comes up with an excuse, claiming she's never even seen a gambling den before. To her shock, the boss erupts, declaring that's a brilliant idea. He lets out a hearty laugh, thoroughly impressed by her supposed insight. He then orders one of his men to take Frim on a tour of the gambling dens. Frim is stunned, asking if he means right now, unsure of her new assignment. He explains that her new job is to come up with a proposal for him. He believes her fresh perspective is exactly what they need, putting all his faith in her. One of his men leads her away, and she nervously agrees to follow. As they walk, she wonders what exactly goes on in a gambling den. She recalls her past life, remembering her deep-seated dislike for such places. But her thoughts are cut short as she's violently shoved out of the way. Before she can react, a man is thrown from a balcony, plummeting to the ground below. The air is filled with the sounds of brutal, unrestrained violence. She realizes this isn't a gambling den at all. It's a fighting arena. And the sight leaves her completely frozen in pure, unadulterated terror. Frim watches as a man in chains is dragged into the arena. Her guide explains that these are slaves forced to fight for entertainment. She sees 2 men locked in a desperate, bloody struggle for their lives. A wave of revulsion washes over her, wondering how this can be allowed. The image of her counting the syndicate's money flashes in her mind, and she's disgusted with herself for never questioning where it came from. This wealth, she realizes, was stolen from the very people who died here. The food she's been eating was paid for with the lives of these people. A profound sickness churns in her stomach. She covers her mouth, realizing one wrong move could have put her in their place. The horror of it all is too much, and she's suddenly sick to her stomach. Her guide rushes over asking if she's all right. She forces a weak smile, claiming the smell just got to her and that she'll observe for a while. But in her mind, she's surrounded by the ghosts of those who have died in this arena. The sheer misery of this place is overwhelming. She remembers her naive hope that her new life and powers could be used to help people. But she now sees how foolish that was in the face of such a cruel reality. In the darkness of her thoughts, she apologizes for being unable to do anything to help them. Yet she knows she can't afford to fail. The boss is waiting for her proposal. Then an idea begins to form, a potential way to change this entire situation. She asks her guide if she can see the place where the slaves are managed. As she heads off, she runs into a familiar face who calls out her name. It's Pacus' older brother, Rad, who greets her with a smile and asks where Pacus is. Frim explains that she's on a special assignment directly for the boss now. Rad seems surprised, wondering what she could possibly be doing in this part of the hideout. She tells him the boss is looking for new ideas for the gambling den and sent her to observe. She also mentions seeing another of the boss's men, but Rad just scoffs at the name. He tells her to be careful, since the area she's heading to is dangerous. He warns that she might get bitten, a comment that puts her on edge. And soon she finds herself walking down a dark corridor lined with prison cells. A hand grips the bars as a prisoner shouts at her for staring. Her guide smirks, repeating the warning that she might get bitten. She sees men broken by despair and others who have lost their minds completely. She can't understand how they can be treated this way when they're all human. The sheer inhumanity of it all leaves her speechless and horrified. Suddenly, a large hand reaches for her, and she flinches back in terror. But the hand quickly pulls back as she stumbles away from the cell. A voice tells her to calm down, trying to soothe her panic. He assures her that he has no intention of causing her any harm. He introduces himself as Logan, the one in charge of the slaves here. He asks her not to be afraid, his voice surprisingly gentle. She flinches but manages to introduce herself as Frim. She explains that she's here on a direct order from the boss and asks to speak with him. Logan looks her over, asking if she's really here all by herself. Frim quickly lies, claiming her guide got drunk and wandered off somewhere. He seems to accept her story without any further questions. He then invites her to come with him so they can talk properly. She quietly thanks him, following him into a small office. He pulls out a chair for her, a gesture she wasn't expecting. As he sits down across from her, the weight of his position seems to settle on his shoulders. He asks why she isn't taking a seat, but Frim remains frozen in place. Her eyes are drawn to the heavy iron collar fastened around his neck, and in that moment she understands that he too is a slave. She realizes that because she's here on the boss's orders, she technically holds a position of power over this man. Their relationship is anything but equal. The thought makes her lower her head, a wave of shame washing over her. Suddenly, tears begin to stream down her face, catching Logan completely off guard. He leans forward in a panic, asking if she's all right and apologizing for whatever he did. He grows more distressed, begging her to tell him what's wrong as her tears refuse to stop. She tries to stifle her sobs, overwhelmed by a profound sadness for their plight. In her mind, she feels she has no right to cry in front of those who have suffered so much more. Through her tears, she manages to apologize for her sudden outburst. She then looks up at Logan with newfound determination, making a direct plea. Frim asks him to teach her everything he knows about this place and its customs. With new information, she hurries back through the dark corridors. She reflects on the grim and brutal reality of the fighting arena. The core problems are clear: violence, poor sanitation, starvation, and disease. But she realizes that she now holds the key to changing their fate. She understands that if nothing changes, the slaves will continue to perish one by one. She thinks of Logan's kindness and the grim fact that he could die at any moment. And with a firm grip on the door, she decides she can't just let that happen. The boss looks up as she enters, asking if she's come up with an idea. With her hands clasped, she confirms that there is indeed something she can do. In a flash of inspiration, she declares that she's found a way to save lives. Standing before the cells, she presents her proposal to the boss. It's a wild idea, but one that could improve the slaves' living conditions, even if only by a little. She explains that while it's not a perfect solution, it's a start. The boss smirks, remarking that her new gambling venture is already getting a good reputation. She reveals her idea was to introduce a new boxing-style fighting method, happy to be of use to him. She explains that by introducing rules and rounds, the fights become a performance for the crowd, though she admits to herself that she's making up most of the details as she goes. The boss is impressed, agreeing it's a good way to keep the slaves from dying so quickly. She then adds that they should also clean the entire gambling den and improve the slaves' living conditions. A clean place, she argues, is more comfortable for everyone, unlike the current stench. The boss strokes his chin, admitting that the smell had been bothering him too. But he questions why the slaves themselves would need better living arrangements. Frim explains that healthy, strong slaves are simply a more valuable commodity. She clenches her fist, ready to make her final, most persuasive point. Because after all, she says with a smile, no one finds it entertaining to watch two weaklings fight. The boss considers her logic for a moment and then agrees. He tells her to handle the cleaning since her proposal won't hurt anyone. Frim knows it's still dangerous but hopes this will improve their lives even just a little. He then adds that if any slaves act up during the cleaning, she shouldn't hesitate to get rid of them. He looks back at her, asking if she understands his order. And yet, even with his approval, she can't shake the thought that she's still terrified of people dying. When he asks what she said, she quickly denies it with a nervous smile. He then tells her to come see him later, as he has something for her. And to her surprise, he hands her a large, leather-bound book. She looks down at the book, confused by his unexpected gift. He explains that it's a grimoire for water mages, a reward for her hard work. He figures it's better in her hands than with someone who can't even read. Overwhelmed by his generosity, she offers him a heartfelt thank you. But as she looks at the text, she realizes something strange. The original Frim, she thinks, must have been quite the diligent student, yet she can't recall where the girl would have learned such a skill. Suddenly, a sharp pain shoots through her head, cutting her thoughts short. Her focus is broken by two of the boss's men, who drunkenly call out her name. But the boss quickly shuts them down, telling them to earn their own rewards. She can't help but smile, feeling a genuine sense of accomplishment. Back in her room, she eagerly begins to study the grimoire. She's amazed to find it's an incredibly detailed text on water magic. But as she dives into the contents, she's overwhelmed by the sheer volume of complex information. The concepts are difficult, and the book itself is incredibly dense. She learns that magic in this world involves using one's own power to influence spirits. Simple spells can be cast with just her internal mana, but the key lies in her own attributes. And more than anything else, the most important factor is one's imagination. A concept that leaves her completely and utterly stumped. She decides to test this theory, trying to command the water to take a specific form. The liquid swirls and coalesces in her hands, solidifying into the perfect shape of a pen. Frim holds the creation in her hand, completely stunned by her own success. But she quickly realizes that while it looks real, it's still just water and can't actually write. She wonders if there's a more practical use for this newfound control. Then, remembering her promise to clean the slave quarters, an idea strikes her. Using her knowledge from her past life, she tries to create a powerful cleaning agent. But all she manages to conjure is a small, wobbly blob of water. She forces a smile, admitting that she can't even tell if her experiment was a success. She walks off, pondering the simple chemical makeup of water. Then, with a flash of inspiration, she tries to command it into a new form, O3. But the resulting chemical reaction produces a strange, raw smell that fills the air. The pungent odor is so overwhelming that she immediately gags. She stumbles backward, trying to escape the powerful scent she's unleashed. The sheer intensity of it nearly brings her to her knees. She pants for breath, completely stunned by the result of her experiment. A dawning realization hits her as she processes what just happened. She's created ozone, a powerful deodorizer she never imagined could be made with magic. But her excitement is tempered by the knowledge that ozone can also be incredibly dangerous. Her heart is still pounding from the shock of her discovery. She decides to get some food to calm her nerves and clear her head. She finds the boss in the common area, surrounded by his usual men. He notices her looking pale and asks what's wrong, and she simply admits that she's hungry. He gestures to the food on the table, telling her to eat whatever she wants. Frim quietly agrees, still a bit overwhelmed by his kindness. As she eats, she realizes just how much closer she's gotten to the powerful Mafia boss. She then gets his attention, telling him she's learned a new spell from the grimoire. The boss is immediately intrigued, eagerly asking what kind of magic she's mastered. With a nervous look, she tells him that the spell she learned is poison. The boss leans in, his eyes narrowing as he repeats the word back to her. Poison. She knows he's paranoid about assassination attempts, so she's framed her new spell as a way to purify the air. He reacts with a start, asking if she means she can control some kind of poison spirit. She eagerly explains that it's a spell that will be a great help to him. He admits he doesn't fully understand, but praises her for her efforts anyway. She explains that with this magic, she can reduce the chances of him being harmed by airborne poisons. He taps his finger on the armrest, mulling over her proposal. She worries that maybe she pushed her luck a little too far with her flattery, but instead of scolding her, he just ruffles her hair with a grin. He tells her that she's a good subordinate, a true asset to him. He encourages her to keep up the good work, pleased with her progress. He then wonders aloud if the foul stench in the gambling den is a type of poison. A slow realization dawns on his face as he connects the dots. Frim asks if he's referring to the cleaning she proposed earlier. He clenches his fist, deciding to entrust the entire operation to her. With a sudden roar, he orders the entire gambling den to be shut down for a massive cleaning. He kicks his men into motion, telling them they're all on cleaning duty now. Frim watches the chaos unfold, thinking this has escalated far beyond her expectations. But she quickly realizes this is an incredible opportunity she couldn't have planned for. The boss bellows at his men, telling them the cleaning isn't nearly finished yet. Frim joins the men, scrubbing alongside them as the massive cleanup begins. The boss stands over his subordinates, his voice echoing through the halls. She approaches him with the grimoire, ready to present the next phase of her plan. She explains that the only area left to clean is where the slaves are kept. He listens intently, then entrusts the entire task to her. She then asks the boss if Logan can be assigned to help her with the task. He playfully pinches her cheek, telling her to do whatever she thinks is best. As she walks away, she realizes the job was too big to finish in a single day. She reflects on how intense the boss was, and how much the idea of poison must have bothered him. But whatever the reason, she runs off, determined to see her plan through to the end. She now has permission to do whatever she deems necessary in the slave quarters. She finds Logan and formally asks for his cooperation in the task ahead. But he tells her there's no need to bow, addressing her with a formal title. Frim insists, asking him to take charge of the other slaves for this operation. He agrees, though he admits he can't predict how the others will react. She looks at him with genuine concern, telling him to be careful. With the slaves gathered, Frim stands before them, ready to begin. She announces that the first order of business is for everyone to bathe. Logan questions the decision, but she assures him the boss gave her full authority. She then points to a large barrel, telling them to get started by filling it with water. As she fills the barrel, she thinks how much better it would be if the water was warm. Then, a thought strikes her. Can she control the temperature with her magic? With a new sense of determination, she prepares for another experiment. She focuses her will, commanding the water to become hot. And in an instant, the barrel erupts with steam as the water begins to boil. Frim looks on in amazement, overjoyed that her spell actually worked. But as she considers the implications of this new power, one of the slaves suddenly lunges towards her with a desperate cry. Logan steps in to protect her, and she stares at the face of her attacker. Because in a flash of memory, she recognizes him as the boy she saved right before she died. She's overcome with relief, realizing that he's alive. But he just looks back at her, asking why she would help him, and the question leaves her completely speechless. But it was all just a dream, a memory from a life long past. She's woken by Logan, who asks if she's all right. The boss himself appears in the doorway, drawn by the commotion. She quickly explains that she fell asleep while practicing her new magic. Logan seems flustered by the whole situation, telling her to rest. But Frim quickly speaks up, asking the boss not to punish the others for her mistake. He simply waves it off, telling her to get some rest until the next day. The next morning, she sits up in bed as Logan watches over her. She can't believe she collapsed from overexerting her magic. She decides she needs to be more careful when practicing new spells. But her curiosity gets the better of her as she continues to experiment. Her attempt to create ice fails spectacularly, sending her falling back onto the bed. She wonders why she can make hot water so easily, but not ice. The logic behind it all just doesn't make any sense to her. Frustrated, she tries to push through her mental block. But she must have fallen asleep again from the sheer exhaustion. She gets up, wondering if she's just been too tired to think clearly. She thinks about the food the boss always eats, wondering when she started getting it too. A sudden thought crosses her mind about the boss's intentions. She quickly apologizes to Logan for causing him so much worry. He explains how she suddenly collapsed, asking if she's truly feeling better now. Frim insists that she's fine and is ready to get back to the cleaning, but she adds that he should be careful as well. Logan kneels before her, grateful for her help but warning that their work isn't over. He gently takes her arm, explaining that if anything were to happen to her, He doesn't know what would become of the other slaves, so she must take care of herself. He warns that if she pushes herself too hard again, it's their lives on the line, and she promises to be more careful. With her energy restored, she eagerly agrees to continue the cleaning. She immediately takes charge, directing the other slaves in the massive effort. Logan worries about her overexerting herself again, but she insists she's fine. He's amazed by her power, wondering if she's made a contract with a spirit. Under her command, the slaves begin scrubbing the filth from the cells. Every surface is wiped down, a stark contrast to its previous state. Frim clenches her fist, filled with a renewed sense of purpose. As the day ends, Logan suggests they call it a night and rest. But Frim has one last surprise, a hot bath for everyone who helped. Though she's the one who truly needs it, she watches as Logan thanks her with a grateful smile. But as she works, she notices one of the slaves watching her from a distance. His eyes are filled with a deep-seated hostility and suspicion. The intense glare from a complete stranger leaves her feeling deeply unsettled. Later, Logan finds her studying, carrying a stack of books himself. He asks how her magic training is coming along, and she confirms it's going well. With a gentle smile, he tells her to practice as much as she likes. She thanks him, eagerly asking if she can go practice her cleaning spells. He agrees, and she runs off with a joyful cheer, ready to get back to work. She finds a quiet, secluded courtyard to continue her experiments. This, she thinks, is the perfect place where no one will come to bother her. She peeks over the edge of the rooftop, checking to see if the coast is clear. Satisfied that she's alone, she gets ready to begin her next experiment. She recalls her past knowledge of chemistry, focusing on the elements of hydrogen and oxygen. Since she can already create complex molecules like water and ozone, she figures she can manipulate the elements themselves, using the fire as a visual test. She starts by trying to conjure just a small amount of pure oxygen. But to her confusion, the flames don't seem to react at all. She wonders if maybe the amount she produced was simply too small to make a difference. Frustrated, she starts rapidly trying different combinations, pushing her magic harder and harder. But her reckless experiment backfires, sending her flying backward from a sudden, powerful blast. She analyzes the failure, wondering if the ratio of oxygen to hydrogen was the problem. But the idea of experimenting further with such flammable materials is terrifying. So she decides to try something a little different instead. This time, she attempts to create a defensive water barrier, while simultaneously forming a rod of water filled with pure oxygen. But the complex spell is incredibly difficult to maintain, and the entire creation collapses into a puddle at her feet. She sighs in frustration, realizing this is much harder than she anticipated. Still, she feels that with enough practice, she can eventually master it. Simple shapes are easy enough, but more complex forms are still beyond her grasp. She practices forming delicate shapes like a small butterfly made of water. For now, she admits, this is the best she can do. But as the creation flutters away, she stumbles, chasing after it like a child. A sudden wave of embarrassment hits her as she realizes what she's doing. She buries her face in her hands, completely mortified by her own actions. After composing herself, she decides it's time to get serious again. The fire is still intimidating, but a new idea begins to form. She considers how to keep the oxygen from simply blowing away in the wind. Her solution is to encase the volatile elements within a protective shell of water. She manages to create a wobbly, floating orb of water. Taking aim at a small wooden stick she's set up for practice, she hurls the projectile with all her might. The orb of water shoots through the air, and she braces herself for the impact. But the result is far more powerful than she ever expected. A massive cloud of steam erupts from the target. She realizes she'll have to go find her practice stick later. But her loud experiment has drawn an unwanted crowd of onlookers. One of the men rushes over, explaining that their rivals are in the crowd. He realizes with a jolt that the rival Mafia is here, wondering what they're doing. Frim scrambles back, realizing her loud experiment has drawn everyone's attention. She covers her mouth in horror, terrified that her secret has been exposed. This, she thinks, has just turned into a very, very big problem. Her first instinct is to crawl away and report this directly to the boss. She scrambles to her feet and runs, calling out his name in a panic. Frim finds him and tries to explain the commotion happening outside, but he already knows. He simply tells her to go find a safe place to hide. His men chime in, telling the kid to go play in her room until this is all over. But Frim just watches them, her expression a mixture of fear and resolve. She curls up in a corner, trying to make herself as small as possible. She realizes the timing of the rival's attack might have been a lucky coincidence, but she's terrified of what will happen if they learn she can create explosions. She imagines being dragged away, treated not as a person but as a living weapon. But her fears are interrupted by the triumphant return of one of the boss's men. She quickly offers him a drink, trying to act normal despite the chaos. He proudly boasts that he wanted her to see their bravery in action. The boss cuts in, his first concern being whether or not Frim was injured in the fight. He then dismisses the incident, telling her to go back to her magic practice. Frim can only stare back, completely baffled by his nonchalant attitude. The boss seems to consider her reaction for a moment, before telling her that it's nothing to worry about. But Frim's mind is racing, wondering if he's figured out her secret. She's terrified of what will happen if he knows the truth. He then leans in, asking if she can use attack magic and warning her not to use it against them. The question sends a jolt of pure terror through her. She quickly apologizes for her outburst and makes a hasty retreat. Frim flees down the hall, slamming the door to her room behind her. But as she runs, the boss watches her go with a small, knowing smile. Leaning against the door, she's convinced that this is the end for her. Sometime later, Logan approaches her, reporting that the cleanup is finally complete. She thanks him for all his help, but he simply brushes off her gratitude. He humbly explains that as a former soldier, he's only really useful for manual labor, but she insists that she couldn't have managed the other slaves without his leadership. She reflects on how genuinely kind he is, a stark contrast to his grim reality. Her imagination even pictures him in another life, enjoying a quiet day at a cafe. With the cleaning done, she happily decides to finish her accounting work for the boss. But he suddenly calls out her name, telling her he's going to introduce her to a noble. Frim looks up from her work, completely caught off guard by his announcement. He clarifies that it's just an acquaintance, telling her there's no need to be so tense. Just then, one of the boss's men returns, telling her to come inside. He praises her for the gambling den's new reputation, wondering what she's doing here. But Frim immediately drops into a deep, respectful bow. She recalls hearing that one should never look a noble in the face without permission. Suddenly, a hand grabs her, and the man tells her not to worry about such formalities. He smiles down at her, his demeanor surprisingly casual and friendly. But it's the boss who reacts with shock, addressing the man with a title of great respect. The man simply lets out a quiet, amused chuckle. He then erupts in laughter, asking the boss why he never mentioned any of this. Frim can only stare, completely bewildered by this unexpected turn of events. The man introduces himself with a charming smile as Barcel Daugan. The boss then explains that he and Duggan are brothers. And not just brothers, but identical twins, a fact that leaves Frim utterly speechless. She stammers out her name, admitting she's shocked by their resemblance. The boss just grins, confessing that he's had his brother swap places with him to handle the accounting. Frim can't believe what she's hearing, and the boss just erupts in laughter. He finds her reaction absolutely priceless, calling her the best kid he's ever met. Duggan just smiles, telling his brother he's being cruel, but that he understands the sentiment. The boss then turns back to Frim, his expression growing more serious. He asks her if she would consider coming to work for his brother instead. The offer leaves Frim completely stunned and speechless. She sits across from the two brothers, trying to process the sudden change in her circumstances. Duggan explains that her new job would be to wash the statues of his noble family. He casually suggests she just blast them clean with her water magic. But she knows that if she damages a noble's property, the consequences would be dire. Duggan just laughs, encouraging her to speak her mind without fear. So she explains that simply blasting them with water would make a mess and splash dirt everywhere. She adds that the force of the water could even damage the statues themselves. And she declares that she can't be held responsible if they break or get even dirtier. He laughs again, agreeing to her terms and telling her to do her best. As the conversation continues over drinks, the boss's hand tightens around his mug. He explains that his brother is part of the noble family that essentially runs this entire region. Frim is stunned, trying to wrap her head around such immense power. The boss continues, revealing that as twins they were considered a bad omen and cast out of their own family. She can only listen in awe, impressed by his unbelievable backstory. But she can't help but ask why their parents would abandon them, especially since they're identical. Her innocent question seems to strike an unexpected nerve. He quickly tries to backtrack, realizing he's revealed more than he intended. Frim is instantly terrified, offering a panicked apology for her impertinence. The boss takes a drink, telling her not to worry about it. He explains that his brother is an earth mage, and their family has been making the city's bricks for generations. But he admits that he never had the same magical aptitude as his twin. Frim quickly speaks up, insisting that he has plenty of other good qualities. He agrees, flexing his arm and explaining that he focused on strengthening his body instead. A path that allowed him to build his own power and fortune. And now, he says, he has good subordinates to rely on. The compliment leaves her looking up at him with a small, grateful smile. He then offers her a drink, and she eagerly accepts the gesture. The two brothers erupt in laughter at her enthusiasm, asking if she's all right. But the drink is a bit too strong for her, and the world starts to spin. The boss asks if she's all right, and she admits that her head is spinning. He scoops her up, apologizing for letting her drink and telling her it's time to go. He decides he can't let her go alone, assigning Logan and another man to escort her. And her second escort is the same slave who was watching her with such hostility. His expression is cold and resentful, making his feelings perfectly clear. She recognizes him as the one who was glaring at her, a human slave assigned to fight. The boss then turns his attention to the third person joining the escort. She recognizes the tattered clothes and the familiar, resentful look, because her other escort is none other than her older brother, Pacus. Frim's eyes widen in sheer panic at this new arrangement. The boss orders Pacus to protect Frim, and the boy reluctantly agrees. Logan then speaks up, asking the boss for a moment of his time. He explains that for the cleaning, there are places only a woman can enter. The boss agrees, realizing that having a female subordinate is indeed useful. He entrusts Frim's safety to Logan, and she offers him a grateful thank you. Logan carries the still dizzy Frim, while Pacus trails behind with a sullen look. Her brother glares at her, muttering a resentful threat under his breath. He then turns and walks away, leaving her in Logan's care. Frim watches him go, a deep sense of unease settling over her. Logan explains that one of the female fighting slaves, a woman named Mafia, is a hard worker, but he wonders who they should choose for the second female escort. The hostile slave from before grumbles, looking thoroughly annoyed by the whole situation. Logan turns to him, asking if he has anyone he'd like to recommend for the job. The slave reluctantly admits that the only person he knows is his own sister, Tararine. Frim is shocked as he callously adds that they can just sell her if she's not useful. Just then, two new female slaves are brought forward to join the group. One of them, a muscular woman with a fierce grin, introduces herself as Mafia. The other quietly says her name is Tararine, asking them to look after her. Her brother watches from a distance, his expression still cold and unreadable. Tararine looks at her brother with wide, hopeful eyes, calling out his name in surprise. But he just glances back at her, his expression cold and completely indifferent. Logan steps in, telling Tararine to follow them as it's time to get to work. She quietly agrees, her initial excitement fading into sad resignation. Frim watches the exchange, a sense of unease settling over her. Soon, they arrive at an impressive mansion, the estate of the noble Logan. He greets Frim with open arms, welcoming her to his home. She responds with a bright, cheerful smile, ready for her new assignment. Logan then notices Pacus has also arrived, ruffling the boy's hair with a grin. Pacus just glares back, offering a sullen, barely audible response. Logan explains that the many statues are modeled after the nobles of this country. Frim repeats her concerns that the stone is already damaged and her magic might break them. But he just winks, telling her not to worry since they're already in bad shape. He laughs, adding that it's better she try than to let them crumble on their own. She nervously asks if she can stand back to avoid the spray, and he readily agrees. With his permission, she unleashes a powerful jet of water at the base of a statue. Logan watches on, impressed by the sheer force of her magic. He laughs, telling her he'll watch from the mansion so she can work without distraction. Frim then turns to the others, ready to divide the work and get started. Tararine looks on in awe, amazed that someone so young can perform such a great task for a noble. Frim tries to brush off the compliment, claiming she just got lucky with her magic. She then begins to delegate tasks, assigning Logan to help her directly. But Pacus immediately bristles, furious at the idea of taking orders from her. He seethes with rage, cursing her under his breath for her newfound authority. But Frim has reached her limit with his selfish and violent behavior. She calmly reminds him that this is a direct order from the boss himself. Her words only enrage him further, and he violently shoves her to the ground. The other slaves immediately rush in, holding Pacus back before he can do more harm. Tararine watches the scene unfold, her face a mask of pure shock and horror. Pacus freezes, stunned by the sudden intervention from the others. Logan reminds him that they were ordered to protect Frim at all costs. Pacus struggles against their grip, demanding to be released. But the man's hold is firm, ignoring the boy's furious protests. Tararine rushes to Frim's side, furious that Pacus would dare to harm her. But Frim just looks down, pleading for them all to stop. She explains that hurting him would only make them all look bad. The others look on as Pacus continues to seethe with rage. And Frim realizes with a sinking feeling that her path forward is far from easy. After the confrontation, an awkward silence falls over the group. Mafia approaches her, admitting that while the situation is resolved for now, she realizes that a brand new problem has just presented itself. She tells Logan and Mafia to pass a message to the boss as she can't leave her post. Logan readily agrees, while Mafia just grumbles about all this extra work. Frim then turns to the hostile slave, thanking him for his help earlier. He just brushes it off, claiming it was nothing important. But then he gets in her face, making sure she knows his name is Olmu Roy. Frim stammers an apology, admitting she's bad at remembering names. She quickly recovers, trying to rally everyone to get back to the task at hand. With the group reassembled, she leads them forward to continue their work. But she can't help but notice that the noble family is now watching their every move. She recalls her past life, remembering how satisfying it was to watch things get clean. Seeing the tension between the siblings, she decides it's time for a short break. She offers them both a drink, a simple gesture of kindness. It's just the pure, clean water she can conjure at will. Tararine looks down at the mug, a bit hesitant to accept it, but after a moment, she takes a long, refreshing drink. Her eyes widen in surprise at how incredibly good it tastes. She eagerly turns to her brother, telling him he has to try some as well. Olmu Roy just looks back at her, his expression still guarded and suspicious. But eventually, he raises his own mug and takes a drink. He reluctantly admits that the water is surprisingly good. Frim watches them, seeing her small gesture has finally broken the ice. She decides to give them some privacy, figuring they have a lot to talk about. So she makes an excuse, telling them she needs to step away for a moment. Tararine immediately offers to accompany her, not wanting to be left alone. But Frim stops them, asking one of them to stay behind and wait. She glances back, leaving the two siblings alone to finally have a chance to talk. And it seems her plan worked as they begin to open up to one another. Frim watches from a distance, a small, satisfied smile on her face. As night falls, their work at the noble's mansion continues on. Duggan relaxes in a luxurious bath, commenting on how good the water feels. But Frim can only wonder why she's been tasked with watching him bathe. She's not a water heater, she thinks, even if she can provide the hot water. He compliments her magical water, and she offers a quiet thank you in return. He then asks her for an update on how the cleaning job is progressing. She explains that things are going well, and he praises her for her powerful magic. But her mind flashes back to the confrontation with Pacus, who was less than cooperative. She explains that Pacus used to be her superior, which Duggan notes must be a difficult situation. He tells her not to worry, admitting that he's the one who put her in this awkward position. He explains that Pacus is at a rebellious age and has every reason to act out. Frim listens, her expression unreadable as she processes this new information. He then asks for more hot water, and she immediately obliges. Duggan explains that Pacus was born into a loveless home, often left alone on the floor. The boy would just lie there, a sad smile on his face. His own father would look down on him, questioning if Pacus was even his son. Those cruel words have haunted the boy ever since. He was an unwanted child, a common and tragic story in these parts. His mother would often say they were better off without a father, and Pacus had agreed. But as Duggan's story ends, Pacus notices Frim coughing and asks if she's caught a cold. She assures him she'll be fine with some rest, and he offers a rare, gentle smile. He tells her not to push herself, revealing his own illness was never truly cured. The story then flashes back to a memory of Pacus's childhood. He had confronted his father, begging him to do something to help. But his father coldly replied that Pacus's mother had already refused his money. He then cruelly told the boy to go earn his own keep. The words left Pacus completely shattered and alone. He ran out into the pouring rain, his heart filled with rage. In his despair, he wished that his father would just disappear forever. He finally stopped in front of a door, panting and soaked to the bone. Peeking inside, his face was still a mask of pure, unresolved anger. He had found his mother lying sick in bed, her life slowly fading away. All he could do was watch her sleep, feeling utterly helpless. With no other choice, he turned to the only person he could. His older brother, Rad, took him under his wing, promising to teach him how to survive. He learned how to earn money by any means necessary, through intimidation, threats, and street brawls. And eventually, he even learned the brutal art of how to take a life. For a time, he even had his own subordinates, including Frim herself. Frim listens to the story, her eyes wide with a dawning, horrified understanding. Because Pacus had always seen her as timid, useless, and just another burden to carry. He was taught that this was the only way to survive, and he passed that lesson on to her. But his rage boiled over when he learned that Frim was now working directly for the boss. The boss simply told him it was a shame, as he'd already taken a liking to the girl, and Pacus could only seethe, completely powerless to do anything about it. The story returns to his past, watching over his mother as she lay dying. She would smile weakly, telling him not to cause so much trouble for others, and he would tell her not to worry, urging her to just get some rest. He'd complain about his difficult subordinate, and she'd advise him to treat them with care. She would even ask if Duggan was treating him well, a question he didn't understand. A quiet, somber memory of the woman who was his entire world, and she would always reply with a gentle, knowing smile. But his own life was a constant cycle of failure and abuse. He would question what he was doing wrong, what he should have said, but the frustration would just continue to build inside him. And all that rage was directed at the one person he lost, Frim. He believed his cruelty was a necessary lesson, his own twisted way of teaching. The boss had even stepped in, questioning why Pacus would harm someone so useful. He showed nothing but contempt for the boy's violent outburst. All Pacus could do was curse the man who'd taken everything from him, a burning hatred that would define his every move from then on. Duggan admits he had hoped the two kids could get along, but that Pacus went too far. He tells the boy to take some time and reflect on his actions. And as a result, Pacus is locked away behind the bars of a cell. He can only look down, realizing he's made a terrible mistake. Sometime later, back in the opulent halls of the noble's mansion, Frim begins to worry, wondering why Logan and Mafia are taking so long to return. A sudden, terrible thought crosses her mind. What if Pacus is being punished for what happened? She panics, blaming herself for not thinking through the consequences of her report. Her outburst gets the attention of Logan and Mafia, who have just returned. Frim looks up, her panic turning to relief that they're both safe and sound. Logan and Mafia are both confused by her sudden outburst. Frim asks them what's with their strange reaction. Logan just smiles, telling her not to worry and that he's sorry for making her wait. He reflects that no one has ever shown such concern for a slave before. Frim looks down, a bit embarrassed by her own emotional display. Mafia then explains that they were worried about her, since she was so late. Frim's mood instantly brightens and she invites them to her room to talk. She cheerfully offers them a seat, happy to have them back. As she closes the door, Mafia comments on how kind Frim is to the slaves. But her happy mood is shattered when she screams, realizing someone is in her bed. She watches in shock as a figure sits up from her bed. It's a young man who greets her with a casual smile. Frim's mind races, suddenly recognizing him as Pacus's older brother, Ratty. He explains that he's here as a replacement for Pacus, offering a polite greeting. She recalls seeing him with Pacus before, assuming they must be close. He tells her there's no need for formalities, asking her to just use his name. But Frim panics, realizing she can't remember his name at all. She tries to recall but realizes Pacus only ever referred to him as brother. He chuckles at her distress before finally introducing himself as Murad. With the introductions out of the way, he looks down at her expectantly. He then asks her why his little brother was so upset. The question sends a jolt of panic through Frim. She stammers, trying to figure out what to say. Because she knows this could be a very dangerous situation. Yet as she looks at him, she can't sense any actual anger. She knows that depending on her answer, she could be in serious trouble. She carefully suggests that Pacus was upset about being ordered to be her subordinate. Murad's smile seems to widen just a little. He simply agrees that the whole situation must have been a disaster for her. Frim is left completely confused, wondering why he isn't angry on his brother's behalf. Murad waves it off, apologizing for all the trouble his brother caused her. He then smiles, telling her it's getting late and they should all get some rest. But as she looks around the room, she sees the others have already settled on the floor. Frim tells them they should all sleep on the bed instead. The others hesitate, thinking it would be disrespectful to share a bed with her. But Frim insists, arguing that not using the bed would be rude to their host. She turns to Murad for confirmation, asking if he agrees. He just gives her a warm smile, telling her it's a good idea. Frim beams back, offering him a heartfelt thank you. And as the candle flame flickers out, the long day finally comes to an end. Murad comments that she's surprisingly kind, even to the slaves. But Frim knows that as their superior, it's her duty to treat the boss's property with care. And more importantly, she believes that even if they're slaves, they are still human beings. Her answer seems to bring a gentle smile to Murad's face. He simply accepts her words, turning over to get some sleep. And with a simple good night, the room finally falls into darkness. The next day, the cleaning continues, with Mafia helping Frim direct her powerful water magic. A few days pass, and she notes that their work is finally nearing completion. But watching Murad work so diligently, she admits she still can't figure out the people of this world. Duggan tells her to just do a rough job on the statues, and Frim asks if he's sure. He explains that his family's earth magic is incompatible with stone, causing a rift between them. He even tells her she can kick the shabby things for all he cares. But he admits that since they're statues of famous nobles, he can't just destroy them. He then reveals that their seemingly random placement actually represents the territories of the noble families. Frym looks up, intrigued by this hidden meaning. Duggan smiles, explaining that everything in the world has a purpose. He even speculates that her powerful magic might be a sign of noble blood. But Frym firmly states that she's from the back alleys abandoned by her parents. Yet as she says the words, a sudden doubt crosses her mind. She wonders why that thought would even cross her mind. Duggan suddenly reaches down and ruffles her hair, shaking her head so vigorously that the world begins to spin. He looks down at her, acknowledging that she's had a difficult life too. Frym can only stare up at him, surprised by his sudden empathy. He continues his story, explaining that he was also cast out by his family, and she realizes that in this world, just like her last, everyone carries their own burdens. Duggan suddenly gets excited, telling her to remember the face of anyone who tries to hurt her. He then gives her some surprisingly brutal advice on how to finish a fight, and he ends his lesson with a confident, almost playful smile. To celebrate their hard work, Duggan announces he's prepared a grand feast for everyone. Frym is stunned by the gesture, asking if it's really all right. He smiles, explaining that since the job will be done tomorrow, they've more than earned it. With a bright smile, she offers him a heartfelt thank you. The others erupt in cheers, overjoyed by the unexpected reward. Tararine looks at the lavish spread, her eyes wide with disbelief. And soon they're all enjoying the feast, a rare moment of simple happiness. Duggan then asks Frym to prepare some of her special water, admitting he'll miss it when she's gone. She happily agrees, telling him to bring over a water jug. As she fills a large bowl, he raises his glass, praising the taste and eagerly asking for another. She playfully pretends to be a gas station attendant, getting a bit carried away with her task. Duggan remarks that her water must have a special kind of magic infused within it. He again speculates that she must have noble blood, finding it hard to work while she's watching him. And her efforts have left the entire mansion, from the floors to the grand staircase, looking absolutely pristine. Duggan is amazed, exclaiming that she's managed to clean the entire estate. He then presents them with a box, telling them it's their reward. Murad accepts it on their behalf, offering a formal thank you. Frym watches on, wondering why the supervisor is the one to receive their payment. But Duggan then calls out to Frym, offering her a personal reward for her efforts. She eagerly accepts the new grimoire, a second book to add to her collection. He smiles, telling her it's a way for her to continue polishing her own skills. Flustered by his kindness, she offers a deep, apologetic bow. With their work complete, he tells them it's time to head back to the gambling den. As they walk through the dark city streets, a quiet tension hangs in the air. Frym looks around, feeling a bit lost in the unfamiliar alleyways. But her thoughts are interrupted when Olmu Roy suddenly asks to see her new grimoire. Confused by the request, she hesitantly hands the book over to him. He takes it without a word, leaving Frym with a growing sense of dread. But instead of returning it, he suddenly brandishes a knife, telling her this is just bad luck. He holds the grimoire in one hand and the blade in the other, a smug look on his face. He assures her that he has no intention of telling the boss about any of this, and Frym realizes with a jolt that she's been completely played. He was after the reward all along. She panics, trying to explain that she can't just give it to him without permission. But before he can react, Makia suddenly steps in front of her. She stands protectively between them, demanding to know what's going on. Olmaroy's smug expression doesn't waver in the slightest. He calmly tells Makia not to move or speak, declaring that it's an order, and Frym can only watch, her eyes wide with pure, unadulterated terror. He issues a chilling command, telling Makia not to make a sound. But before anyone can react, Makia suddenly seizes up and collapses. She grits her teeth, struggling against some unseen force that has paralyzed her. Frym watches in horror as her powerful protector is brought to her knees. Olmaroy just smirks, telling her it's useless as another slave appears at his side. She turns to see that Logan has also been taken down, calling out his name in disbelief. The new accomplice effortlessly hoists Logan's limp body over his shoulder. Frym's mind races, realizing with dawning horror that they're all working together. She can only watch, frozen in place, as they drag her protector away into the darkness. And as Murad walks away, he offers a quiet, hollow apology before leaving her behind. Olmaroy corners her against the wall, ordering her to stay back. He warns that no one is coming to save her this time. With a final, casual farewell, he turns to leave. A heavy door slams shut, leaving her completely alone in the alley. She scrambles to the door, her mind reeling from the betrayal. But it's no use. She slumps to the ground in utter despair. She clutches her head, trying to make sense of what just happened. But her panic is cut short as a figure approaches from the darkness. Her eyes widen in terror, bracing for the worst. and a grim-faced man emerges from the shadows, his expression unreadable. It's one of the boss's men asking what she's doing here all alone. She can only look up, her mind still reeling from the betrayal. A hand gently rests on her shoulder, and a woman asks if she's all right, trying to comfort her. But Frim can only wonder what in the world is even happening anymore. Why was the reward stolen? And why was Logan being watched? She doesn't understand any of it. Not a single thing. She curls into a ball, completely overwhelmed by the situation, and she realizes that because of her, her escorts have failed their mission. But in the depths of her despair, a new resolve begins to form. She demands an explanation from Logan, unable to understand what just happened. She falls to her knees, completely lost and confused. But then she remembers her position and orders him to speak. Logan just looks down, pointing to the collar around his neck. Frim is confused, wondering why he won't answer her. She asks if he's here to harm her, if he's a threat, but his expression tells her that's not it. She then asks if he was sent here to get rid of her, yet even that guess feels completely wrong. She recalls the pained looks on their faces, realizing there must be another reason for their betrayal. The woman explains that neither she nor Logan hold any ill will towards her. Frim realizes they're trapped and suggests they should all get some rest for now. The two of them can only look on, their expressions unreadable. With nowhere to go, Frim slumps to the floor in defeat. The betrayal and confusion are almost too much for her to bear. She wonders how much time has passed since they were locked in here, but a sudden noise from the door snaps her out of her thoughts. The distinct sound of a lock being undone echoes through the small room. She looks up just as the heavy door begins to creak open, and standing in the doorway is none other than the boss himself. She looks up in disbelief, calling out his name in a quiet, stunned voice. The boss looks down, apologizing for the trouble his subordinates have caused her. With a stern look, he simply tells her that it's time to come out. He steps aside and she slowly emerges from the dark room. But as she peeks out from behind the door, she sees who's been waiting. It's Pacus and Olmu Roy, the very ones who betrayed her. Murad stands before her with a casual smile, as if nothing ever happened. He offers a simple, almost dismissive apology for his actions. Frim looks from him to the boss, who sits waiting with his arms crossed. Her eyes widen as she demands to know what in the world is going on. The boss begins to explain the full story, which centers around Pacus's mother. She had fallen gravely ill, and her partner Mude needed money for her treatment. A desperate Pacus tried to steal from the boss, but Mood intervened. Yet with time running out, Mood was forced to find another way. He decided to steal the reward from Duggan, including the grimoire, to pay for the medicine. But their actions were ultimately exposed when they tried to buy the cure. Frim looks up, offering a quiet apology for all the trouble. She then asks why Logan would ever agree to help them with such a risky plan. The boss explains that if Pacus had acted out on his own, Frim would have been the one to get hurt. So Logan, knowing their history, stepped in to resolve the situation before it could escalate any further. Logan explains that he did it all to protect Frim as well. The boss listens, his expression grim and serious. He then orders Pacus to apologize, reminding him that none of this would have been possible without her. Pacus looks away, muttering a quiet and resentful apology. With a nervous smile, she asks him not to threaten her again. She wonders if he's truly sorry, as Olmu Roy scoffs in the background. The boss then turns to Frim, offering to buy her anything she wants as an apology. Her eyes light up as she asks for a magic staff she read about in her grimoire, but he's taken aback, realizing just how expensive her request is. Still, he agrees, figuring it's a worthy investment if it helps her. The boss then offers her another reward for all her hard work. She looks down at a heavy bag filled with coins. He explains that since the gambling den is doing so well, this is her share of the profits. With a gruff look, he tells her to just take the money she's earned. But Frim realizes this money is likely meant to help Pacus's mother. Her days soon become a whirlwind of activity, cleaning mansions and auction houses for the nobles. The boss explains that the magic staff she asked for is taking a while to acquire. Because of a major ceremony, the capital is bustling, and the Duggan family is busier than ever. Back in her room, she prepares for another night's rest after a long day, but a foul, pungent odor fills the air, making it impossible for her to sleep. The source of the smell is a mountain of dirty clothes, sent as a thank you for her cleaning work. She realizes they're all secondhand, reeking of sweat and cheap perfume. The stench is so overwhelming she thinks her nose is going to give out. Unable to take it anymore, she bursts out of her room in a panic. She stumbles into the common area, getting the attention of the boss and his men. The boss asks what's wrong, concerned to see her out so late at night. She explains that the smell is making her dizzy, and she feels like she's about to collapse. But this new problem has sparked an idea, and she offers a proposal to improve their work. She passionately explains that counting the dirty, numerous copper coins is an absolute nightmare. One of the men suggests they could just weigh the coins to estimate the total, saving them the trouble. She suggests they introduce uniforms for the gambling den and even add new events like small animal races. This, she argues, would attract a better class of clientele, including more women. But her most important point, she declares with a clenched fist, is that they can use the leftover slaves to start a cleaning business with all these dirty clothes. The boss and his men can only stare back, completely taken aback by her ambitious proposal. She tells them they can work out the details tomorrow, but for now, she's too tired to go back to her room. The boss agrees, telling her to rest here for the night, and she knows her plan was a complete success. She curls up on the couch, wishing the boss a good night. One of the men shushes the others, telling them to keep their voices down, and Frim quickly drifts off to sleep. Her problem finally solved for the night. The next morning, Frim awakens on the couch, wondering why everyone is still there. The boss approaches, telling her she must still be exhausted from the night before. She immediately panics, offering a flustered apology for causing trouble. But he reminds her that before she fell asleep, she was explaining her new business proposal. She tries to recall her tired ramblings, a look of confusion on her face. But the boss is intrigued, asking her to explain her idea in more detail. A wave of panic hits her as she realizes she has no memory of what she proposed. And so, her ambitious plan is put into motion, starting with the slave quarters. She sits before the slaves, who are now part of the newly formed laundry division. With a nervous laugh, she admits to herself that she's just winging it. Mafia asks what exactly she's supposed to do, admitting she has no idea how to do laundry. Frim explains that since Mafia is a beastkin with a keen sense of smell, she'll be in charge of the final quality check. She adds that it's a strict role but necessary to keep the lazier workers in line. Mafia just grins, enthusiastically accepting her new position. Frim then turns to Olmuroy, asking him to supervise the others and make sure no one slacks off. He gives a slight nod, silently accepting his new responsibility. Finally, she asks Terrarine to instruct the others on the proper washing procedures. The girl happily turns to her brother, excited that they'll be working together. But Olmuroy just glances back, his expression as cold and distant as ever. Terrarine misreads his mood completely, leaving Frim to wonder if he's actually pleased. She realizes with a jolt that his cold expression might just be his default state. Terrarine tries to explain that he's happy, but Frim can't see it on his stoic face. Mafia then turns to the others, asking how they all ended up as slaves. Frim listens in, admitting she's also curious about their pasts. Mafia begins her story, explaining that she used to be a monster-hunting adventurer, but after a friend fell into debt, she was sold off and eventually ended up here. She then turns to the siblings, asking them to share their own story. Olmuroy reveals that they are part lizardmen, though their human blood is stronger. Their homeland was struck by a drought, and as half-breeds, they were sold by their own village to survive. But, she adds, there's more to their story than that. Olmuroy then makes a shocking confession. He was the one who ended their master's life, insisting his sister was innocent. Mafia looks on, completely baffled by this sudden revelation. Terrarine explains that the slave trader who bought them was far more powerful than they ever imagined. She closes her eyes with a sad smile, admitting they were completely deceived. The trader got drunk and locked her away, but Olmuroy broke down the door to save her. In the ensuing struggle, a beam fell from the ceiling of the small hut, striking the trader. Olmuroy can only look down, quietly insisting that it was just an accident. To pay off the trader's debt to Duggan, Olmuroy became a fighting slave while she took up sewing. Frim listens to their tragic story, trying to process it all, and she realizes just how much they've all had to endure to survive. Logan tells her that she doesn't need to worry about their pasts. He explains that everyone is just desperately trying to survive, and they're alive now because of her. The others look on, a newfound sense of unity forming between them. Frim is touched by their resilience and their trust in her. She admits that she was a little taken aback by their stories, but she quickly rallies them, saying it's time to get back to work. Her first order of business is to tackle the mountain of stinking clothes from her room. She smirks, thinking she's abusing her power for personal gain, but she can't help it. With a determined clap, she officially kicks off their new laundry operation. And so, the work begins, with tubs of dirty clothes ready to be washed. She focuses her magic, trying to create a powerful cleaning agent. But the result is a powerful blast that nearly knocks her off her feet. She realizes this new technique is far more useful than she expected. She recalls her past knowledge of ultrasonic cleaners, watching the dirt lift from the fabric. With a flash of inspiration, she creates hydrogen peroxide to bleach and sterilize the clothes. A confident smile spreads across her face, realizing this could be a massive success. But the process is far from easy, requiring intense concentration. The boss appears behind her, asking why she looks so troubled. She explains that while the laundry business is going well, there's a problem. While the clothes get clean, the process is too harsh and wears them out too quickly. The boss suggests they could simply repurpose the damaged clothes. But Frim explains that with the upcoming ceremony, they can buy up cheap second-hand clothes and start their own tailoring division to repair and resell them. She adds that if they're going to expand their business, they should think bigger. After all, she points out, he's a powerful boss with hundreds of men under his command. She gets a bit carried away, explaining that he can delegate tasks to others, before realizing she's overstepped and offering a panicked apology. But the boss just smiles, admitting that she has a good point. He ruffles her hair, telling her that her words have truly struck a chord with him. He admits that he was often deceived in his youth, which is why he's hesitant to trust others. He admits that's what he used to believe. Frim looks up at him, listening with a new understanding. She realizes that while he's a ruthless criminal by her old world standards, his men are uneducated and he must enforce a strict hierarchy to maintain control. In this world, everyone is just desperately trying to survive. The boss admits that if he doesn't start trusting his people, his organization can't grow. He knows he needs to start acting with the awareness of a true leader. And Frim realizes that he lives by his own unique, unwavering creed. She calls out his name, getting his attention one last time. With a determined smile, she promises to do her best to help him. The day of the grand ceremony finally arrives, filling the city with an air of anticipation. But for Duggan, the whole affair is nothing more than a tedious obligation. He complains about the ancient traditions of the royal capital's ceremony. As his carriage rattles through the streets, his mood only sours further. He's greeted by an attendant who asks how his visit with the family went. But Duggan just covers his face, embarrassed by the very thought of seeing his own statue. He arrives back at his estate, where the newly cleaned statues stand proudly. But as he looks up, he realizes something is different from how he left it. It's not just the statues. The entire mansion has been polished to a brilliant shine. An attendant reports that a merchant with a special kind of magic was responsible for the work. A young noble considers the report, a thoughtful look on his face. He then smiles, remarking that this new development sounds quite interesting. The boss panics, shouting his brother's name and explaining that he had to lend Frim out. Just then, one of his men bursts into the room with urgent news. The boss asks what's wrong, wondering if something has happened to his brother. The man explains that a new job has come in, a direct request from the main family at the royal palace. The boss explodes in fury, grabbing the man and accusing him of selling Frim to their father. But his subordinate pushes him away, telling him not to jump to conclusions. He explains that the story of a merchant's child cleaning statues with magic has piqued the family's interest. The boss sighs in frustration, realizing this is all his fault for letting her get noticed in the first place. One of his men turns to Frim, asking if she's just going to run away. She forces a nervous smile, unsure of what she's supposed to do. The boss explains that an order from the royal palace is absolute, and defying it would put them all in danger. Frim looks at him, acknowledging the gravity of the situation. She then asks what kind of job they're even asking her to do. He admits he doesn't know, but warns that once they hear the request, they won't be able to refuse. She clenches her fist, realizing that if she runs, the entire gambling den could be destroyed. But then she reasons that if she was hired for her cleaning skills, all she has to do is a good job. The boss and his brother can only stare back, completely baffled by her simple logic. She explains that she has to trust them, since they're the ones who gave her a chance in the first place. She declares that if she does well, her work will be recognized by the other nobles too. The boss sighs, finally agreeing to let her go and prove herself. He warns her to be careful, and she gives him a cheerful, confident reply. Later, Duggan complains about getting scolded by his brother over the situation. The boss explodes, blaming Duggan for introducing him to Frim in the first place. Sometime later, Frim waits in a simple room, with Logan standing quietly nearby. She looks exhausted as she confirms that they are indeed heading to the royal palace. Logan places a gentle, reassuring hand on her shoulder. He then offers her a simple wooden bowl and spoon. Frim looks up, confused by this small act of kindness. He explains that for those of low status, having their own bowl is a necessity for survival. She accepts a small bundle from him, offering a quiet thank you for his kindness. She reflects that even after the betrayal, he still seems to care about her well-being. Logan kneels before her, simply telling her to be careful on her journey, and she responds with a bright, determined smile, ready for what's to come. Soon she's led into a sparse room by a large man in a heavy cloak. He turns to her, explaining that this is his own secret, special place. Frim looks around, her eyes drawn to a strange door that seems to have some kind of magical lock. But the man simply shoves it open with a display of brute force. He then turns back, telling her to hurry inside before they're seen, leaving her completely bewildered. Frim looks around in awe, realizing the secret place is a storeroom filled with valuable treasures. The man explains that he brought her here for a reason, pulling out a set of clothes for her to wear. He tells her that if she's going to the royal palace, she needs to dress the part. But as he turns to leave, Frim calls out to get his attention. She proudly shows off her new outfit, asking him what he thinks. He admits that it suits her well, and she looks down with a shy expression. She can't help but wonder if it's really all right for her to wear something so expensive. He then starts handing her several bags of money, telling her to take them with her. Frim panics, asking if she's expected to pay any of this back. But he explains that it's all for her, just in case she runs into any trouble. He warns her that the royal palace is full of dangerous people and she can't afford to lose. She offers him a bright, heartfelt thank you for his concern. He then mentions other items she'll need, like a knife and the staff she requested. He explains that a mage with a staff is treated very differently from one without. There's a certain compatibility between a mage and their staff, a bond that enhances their power. He even admits that his own father could never find a staff that suited him, but he quickly cuts himself off, telling her to forget he ever said anything. The sudden shift in tone leaves her feeling incredibly awkward. She then pulls out a small, thin wand, asking what he thinks of it, but he immediately recognizes it as a staff of the dark attribute, leaving her completely stunned. She admits that even so, she can feel a faint flow of magic coming from the wand. The boss remarks that it's a bit too subtle for an assassin, which leaves her completely flustered. But he tells her to take it anyway, figuring it's better than having nothing at all. And with her preparations complete, the day of her departure finally arrives. Duggan appears at the door, announcing that he's here to pick Frim up. But he quickly silences his brother before the boss can say anything more. He tells him to be quiet, gesturing to the sick woman resting in the nearby bed. It's Pacus's mother, still weak but finally getting the rest she needs. They then turn to see Frim, who has also fallen asleep from exhaustion. Duggan looks down at her small form, remarking that she's still just a child after all. The boss tells his brother to just take her, since she's exhausted from everything that's happened. Duggan just smiles, assuring him that this is what he asked for. With a final, stern look, the boss tells him to make sure she comes back safely. Duggan just offers a small, confident smile in return. One of the men begs him to promise he'll return, but Duggan just seems amused by the concern. The boss's overprotective nature gets the better of him, and he starts a loud argument that wakes Frim up. Her eyes fly open, startled by the sudden commotion. And just like that, she's on her way, riding in a carriage with Duggan. She panics, calling out for the boss, but Duggan quickly reminds her who he is. Frim covers her face, completely embarrassed that she fell asleep and caused a scene. Duggan tells her to forget her embarrassment and look outside, because they've arrived at their destination, the royal palace. The sight of the opulent carriage alone is enough to leave her speechless. As they step inside, she's immediately overwhelmed by the sheer grandeur of the palace. Every hall and courtyard is a testament to immense wealth and power. Duggan explains that this massive, imposing structure is her new workplace. She follows him through the halls, flanked by imposing royal guards. He confirms that her job here is, once again, to clean. With a confident grin, he tells her he's handing the entire task over to her, and the sheer scale of the job leaves her completely and utterly terrified. She panics at the thought of spending an entire day just waiting around doing nothing. But Duggan just gives her a thumbs up, explaining that waiting is now part of her job. She's then led to a luxurious private room, feeling completely out of place in such a grand setting. Duggan gestures inside, telling her there's someone he wants her to meet. An older man with a kind smile introduces himself as Nick Lesson. Duggan explains that since he can't always be by her side, Nick will be looking after her. He warns that she may have to wait for several days before she's finally called upon. To keep her from getting bored, he gives her free reign of a courtyard to practice her magic. Frim eagerly agrees, determined to use this time to her advantage, and she's led to a beautiful sunlit courtyard, the perfect place to hone her skills. She practices a new spell, forming a blade of pure water with her wand. She unleashes a barrage of sharp projectiles, testing her offensive capabilities. With so much free time on her hands, she decides to focus entirely on her magic training. But she finds the wand difficult to handle, able to channel only half her true power. She considers cleaning the courtyard, but hesitates, knowing she shouldn't touch anything without permission. Then it hits her. Practicing in the open might change how people perceive her. She could go from being seen as a simple cleaner to a powerful mage. The thought brings a confident, almost mischievous smile to her face, but her practice is suddenly interrupted by a voice calling out from the side. A young man appears asking why she's practicing magic in this courtyard. He has surprisingly well-kept hair for someone in such simple clothes, and Frim can't help but wonder who this person is. He notes that despite her ragged appearance, she's remarkably clean, as if she's intentionally dressed down. His observation that she looks like she's from a good family catches her completely off guard. She immediately grows suspicious, forcing a nervous smile. The young man stands before her with a casual, confident air. She cautiously asks if it's all right for her to speak with him. He cheerfully agrees, introducing himself as a mere apprentice attendant. But she knows that even an apprentice serves a noble, and she must show him the proper respect. He leans in with a smile, telling her she's interesting and that she can speak to him casually. She agrees, but her mind races, trying to figure out if he's a noble in disguise. She realizes she should have acted more like a child to throw him off her trail. But he suddenly offers her a bundle of expensive-looking sweets from a silk handkerchief. She's completely thrown, wondering what his angle is as she politely declines for now. The whole situation feels far too suspicious and she can't figure out his true motive. He casually enjoys a treat before asking why she's here in the first place. He explains that he's been stuck here for 10 days on a cleaning job and just wants to go home. He then invites her to his private room to talk more, sending a jolt of panic through her. Her mind races with worst-case scenarios, wondering what a man like him could possibly want with her. But she's saved by a chef who calls out, asking for some of her special water. She quickly excuses herself, claiming she has work to attend to. The young man watches her walk away, a thoughtful look on his face. A small, knowing smile plays on his lips as she departs. Later, she reports the strange encounter to Nick Lesson, showing him the sweets. He immediately recognizes the suspicious nature of the gift. Frim recounts the man's strange offer to eat them in his private room. Nick asks with concern if she ate any of the sweets, and she quickly explains that she was too afraid they might be poisoned. Nick considers her words, his expression growing serious. He decides to inform Duggan and will dispose of the suspicious treats himself. She bows respectfully, asking Nick to please look after her. And with her report, the palace is suddenly on high alert, searching for the strange man. A few days later, she's back in the courtyard, but this time she's not alone. Duggan is impressed, remarking that she's quite the formidable person. He decides to leave the rest to her, but she apologizes for causing increased security patrols. He tells her not to worry, pointing her to a small hut where she can find all the tools she needs. They arrive at the small building, which she realizes is a live-in management hut. She notes that it's fully stocked with cleaning supplies and even has a key, wondering if Duggan plans to stay here. She points out that while the room is a bit dirty, its solid door makes it a good defense against intruders. After all, she thinks, it's not safe to be seen from the main building, and she needs a private space to work. She explains that since so few people know about her job, this hut is the perfect private workspace. Duggan agrees, even telling her to use her attack magic to drive away any intruders. With her new base of operations secured, she turns her attention to the filthy courtyard fountain. She pulls on a glove, ready to get her hands dirty. Or rather, to let her magic do the work for her. With a determined shout, she commands the water to appear. A powerful stream erupts from her hands, a testament to her training. The blast scours the courtyard, washing away years of grime in an instant. She can't help but smile, pleased with the results of her hard work. She reflects that her control over her magic has grown, allowing her to manipulate multiple streams at once. She lets out a wild laugh, almost daring any intruders to try and get past her now. The courtyard stones are left sparkling clean, a testament to her power. Her cleaning continues uninterrupted, and she's a little disappointed that no one has shown up to challenge her. Her thoughts drift back to the mysterious man who still hasn't been found. She can't help but wonder what will happen to him if he's ever captured. But her musings are cut short when Nick Lesson arrives, telling her it's time to eat. She happily agrees, grateful that Duggan has been sending her meals twice a day. While it's likely just the leftovers from the noble's table, it's far better than what she's used to. Nick notices she's still hungry and offers her some extra food. A simple, kind gesture as he adds a few sweets to her plate. She's overjoyed by his thoughtfulness, knowing he always brings her snacks so she won't go hungry. But she can't help but think that Duggan, with his intimidating face, looks far more dangerous. Nick then explains that the royal palace was a battlefield not long ago, and the Duggan family is handling the repairs. Frim eagerly asks for more details, but Nick explains it all happened before she was even born. He recounts how a dispute over the royal succession plunged the entire country into chaos. The damage from the conflict still remains, and he wonders who will ever fix the mess those nobles made. Curious, she asks him what the current king is like. Nick explains that while the king isn't a bad person, he's still young and naive about the ways of the world. Each noble house has its own agenda, vying for power and influence. And in their endless struggle, they fail to see what their country truly needs to survive. The young king shouts that if things continue this way, their country will be devoured and destroyed. Nick just smiles, remarking on how the king's passion can be almost paralyzing. Frym is impressed, thinking he sounds like a wonderful king for ending the war. But Nick explains that the king's skill with a sword and his contract with a rare dark spirit are the only reasons the 4 great noble families haven't completely taken over. He shows her a diagram of the political landscape, with noble houses vying for control over the elements. She asks why there's only 1 water family, and Nick explains there used to be 4. She realizes this information is far more recent than anything she's read in her books, and it dawns on her that her rare water attribute might be the reason for all this attention. She wonders if, because of her power, she might finally be protected by the country itself. She considers the implications of her rare magic, but knows getting involved in the noble's power struggles is a terrible idea. Her quiet contemplation, however, is suddenly cut short. A small object hits her on the head and she cries out in surprise. It's the mysterious young man from before, who points at her and calls her an intruder. He apologizes for their last encounter, but she warns him to stay right where he is. He seems to accept her caution, asking for her name instead. She introduces herself simply as Frym, but he presses for her family name. With a nervous look, she admits that she doesn't have one. He then points out that it's rude to ask for a name without offering his own first. He seems to consider her point for a moment. He then laughs, offering a quick apology for his rudeness. He introduces himself with a cheerful smile as Komu, but Frym presses further, asking for his family name as well. He reveals his family name is Regia, a name that sends a jolt of shock through her. Her mind screams that he's far too suspicious, and she considers blasting him with her magic. She quickly makes an excuse to leave, but he calls for her to wait. Later, she reports the entire encounter to Nick Lesson. Nick repeats the name she gave him, Komu Regia, and Frym insists that no matter how you look at it, the man is incredibly suspicious. Nick explains that Regia is the Prime Minister's family name, but notes that Komu didn't have a family crest. He shows her his own, explaining that every noble in the country has one displayed prominently, and for a human from the Prime Minister's family, it's an absolute necessity. Frym confirms that the man she met definitely didn't have one. Duggan declares him a complete intruder, ordering her to drive him away with magic if she sees him again. He then hands her an ornate dagger for her own protection. He tells her to use it without hesitation if she finds herself in a desperate situation. Duggan then asks her to draw a portrait of the man, focusing on his most distinct features. She quietly agrees, picking up a quill to begin the sketch. After studying her drawing, Duggan notes that no one in the Prime Minister's lineage has black hair and black eyes. Duggan then turns to Nick, who listens with a serious expression. He places her drawing into a strange box with a magical crest, and Frym watches as a light emanates from within. She's stunned to realize it's a magical duplicating machine, creating a perfect copy of her sketch. Nick then turns to Frym, thanking her for her cooperation in this matter. He seethes with rage, declaring that this intruder will be dealt with for his insolence. Duggan then turns back to Frym, warning her to be careful. He explains that for the man to approach her multiple times, he must have a specific goal. With the warning delivered, Frym is left alone once more in the now pristine courtyard. She walks through the grand halls, her mind still reeling from the day's events. She wonders to herself what part of the palace she should clean next. As she reflects on her growing workload, a voice suddenly praises her for her excellent work. She looks up to see a well-dressed man with a kind, inviting smile. She has no idea who this person is, wondering what he could possibly want from her. The man leans in closer, getting her full attention. He then makes a surprising offer, asking if she would consider working for his family. Frym can only look back in confusion, completely caught off guard by the proposal. But the man grows angry, declaring that he was the one who noticed her talent first. Suddenly, a crowd of nobles and their attendants swarms around her, all trying to get her attention. They shower her with gifts and job offers, leaving her completely overwhelmed by her newfound fame. Frym realizes with a jolt of panic that she's being headhunted. The thought of working for another family briefly crosses her mind, but she quickly lowers her head, her decision already made. She looks up, apologizing and declaring that she has no intention of leaving her current master. Her firm refusal leaves the nobles completely stunned and confused. They try to persuade her, arguing that serving a noble family is a far greater honor. One even suggests she should come to his estate, but Frym tries to cut in. She explains that while their offers are a great honor, she must respectfully decline. But the man insists, refusing to take no for an answer. She looks him in the eye, stating that she could never betray her master for money. She asks them to leave, declaring that she can't trust people who would try to buy her loyalty. Her heart pounds in her chest, but her resolve doesn't waver. A voice from the crowd then tells her to lift her head. She looks up, her expression a mixture of fear and confusion. But the noble just smiles, admitting that he made an unreasonable request. He even tells her to keep all the gifts they've offered her. The others chime in, praising her for her unwavering loyalty to her master. Frym can only look on, completely baffled by their reaction. She realizes with a jolt that her refusal has somehow boosted her reputation. And later that evening, she's rewarded with a lavish meal for her troubles. Duggan explains that her reputation has only grown because of her loyalty. He recounts how during the War for Succession, betrayal was an everyday occurrence. Frym can only listen, taking in this new piece of political history. A large, bald man chimes in, impressed that she refused the noble's offers. He laughs heartily, complimenting Duggan on finding such a good subordinate. The man then teases someone named Forbrin, asking if his loud voice is bothering Frym. He smirks, admitting that he has no intention of being polite. He then explains that her new guards are from the Red Dragon Knights, a group close to the Duggan family. Duggan encourages her to eat more so she can grow big and strong like him, a thought that makes Frym flex her tiny arm. He then gets her attention, announcing that it's time for her reward. Frym looks up, asking why she's being rewarded. He explains that the intruders they were looking for have been caught, and that includes the mysterious young man who has been punished for his actions. The news leaves her completely stunned and speechless. He warns that they can't relax just yet and will need to remain on guard. But all she can think about is the man's fate, wondering if he was killed. Duggan notices her pale expression, asking what's wrong. She quickly apologizes, explaining that she needs to leave for the day. He watches her go, letting her have a moment to herself. She retreats to her quiet space, the news weighing heavily on her mind. The news hits her like a physical blow, leaving her sick to her stomach. She thinks back to the young man, who seemed suspicious but still had his whole life ahead of him. A dark thought crosses her mind. What if she was wrong, and her testimony led to an innocent person's demise? She tries to convince herself that she didn't do anything wrong, that maybe she just overreacted. But she knows she was careless, forgetting that the rules of her old world don't apply here. The next day, she throws herself back into her work, trying to forget. But her quiet cleaning is interrupted as a voice calls out her name. One of the palace attendants stands over her, looking down with an impatient expression. He tells her to stop what she's doing and get out of the way. And Frym can only bow her head as a group of noblewomen pass by, reminding her of her place. A noblewoman watches the scene with a cold, disapproving glare. But a voice tells her that's enough, and Frym keeps her head bowed low. Duggan warns her to stay on her guard, as there may still be intruders lurking about. She can only offer a quiet, tired agreement. He looks down at her, a hint of concern in his otherwise stern expression. He then changes the subject, explaining that the head chef has requested her help in the kitchen. He apologizes for piling more work on her, but says he's trying to manage her workload. But Frym insists that staying busy is a welcome distraction from her thoughts. He seems to accept her answer, turning away without another word. And so, she finds herself in the bustling palace kitchen ready for her next task. The head chef thanks her, explaining that her bad back makes it difficult to do all the work herself. She learns that the head chef is a bit of an oddity, with a particular fondness for noble cuisine. The woman recalls how she used to slip on the greasy floors before Frym cleaned them with her magic. She asks if Frym enjoyed the meal, and is pleased to hear that she did. But the woman continues to watch her with a curious, unblinking stare. Frym explains that she was just curious about all the unfamiliar ingredients she saw. The chef points to a basket of strange-looking vegetables, asking if they're common where she's from. Frym can only offer a nervous look, unsure how to answer the question. The chef then makes a surprising offer, asking if Frym would like to try cooking with them. Frym asks if she's serious, and the chef happily confirms that she is. The chef explains that since she's the only one here, she's happy to leave the kitchen in Frym's hands. She adds with a warm smile that cooking is supposed to be fun. Frym eagerly accepts, and the chef tells her to use whatever ingredients she can find. With the kitchen now hers, the chef decides to go get some rest. Left alone, Frym wonders what she should even make, feeling a bit bold without any supervision. But she finds it strange that the chef would let a child handle knives and fire without any warning. She wonders if maybe she's been a little too careless in her excitement. Still, she looks over the ingredients, trying to decide on a plan. With a new sense of resolve, she decides to just give it a try. She picks up a loaf of bread, figuring the easiest thing to make would be a simple sandwich. She starts by washing some fresh greens, noting their crisp texture. Next, she slices some cooked meat and cheese, finding the flavors a bit plain. But she realizes the sandwich needs a sauce to bring all the flavors together. She considers just using salt, but finds only a massive, heavy block of it. Realizing that won't work, she scans the kitchen for another solution. Her eyes land on a basket of eggs and a jar of vinegar, sparking an idea. She recalls a recipe from her past life, combining egg, vinegar, and salt in a bowl. But instead of whisking by hand, she uses her magic to rapidly mix the ingredients. A proud smile spreads across her face, realizing how easy her magic makes the task. And in an instant, she's created a thick, creamy sauce from scratch. She proudly looks at her creation, a perfect bowl of mayonnaise. She recalls seeing it made on a factory tour in her past life, though she admits she might have made a bit too much. Just then, the head chef returns, surprised to see what she's been up to. The woman smiles, asking what kind of strange new dish this is. Frim proudly explains that it's mayonnaise, a condiment to enhance other foods. But she quickly panics, realizing she used raw ingredients and warns the chef not to eat it. The chef, however, completely ignores her warning, dipping a finger in for a taste. Frim can only watch in horror as the woman tries the untested concoction. The chef chews thoughtfully, savoring the new flavor. Her eyes then snap open as she declares that this is an absolutely incredible creation. The chef is amazed by the simple ingredients, and Frim explains it's a new kind of seasoning. She clarifies that it's not meant to be eaten alone, but to be put on bread, meat, or vegetables. The chef decides to try it for herself, spreading the sauce on the sandwich Frim prepared. And the first bite leaves her completely and utterly stunned. Tears stream down her face as she's overwhelmed by the rich, delicious flavor. She finishes the entire thing, savoring every last bite. The chef is so impressed that she asks Frim to teach her how to make it. Frim happily agrees, and the chef beams with gratitude. She then asks if cooking has helped lift Frim's spirits at all. And for the first time in days, a genuine smile returns to Frim's face. She offers a quiet thank you, her spirits finally lifted by the simple joy of cooking. Later, she walks through the grand, sunlit halls of the palace. She realizes with a start that her time here is almost over, and she'll be heading back tomorrow. But she worries about what to do with all the gifts she's received from the other nobles. Her thoughts are cut short by a commotion echoing from down the corridor. A large man holds back a noble, who desperately tries to get past him. The noble pleads with him, his face a mask of pure desperation. Frim watches the scene unfold, completely confused by the sudden conflict. The bald knight explains that the country's prestige is on the line, especially in front of the Red Dragon Knights. He seems concerned, wondering how they should handle this delicate situation. The noble explodes in anger, furious that the other man tattled on him. The bald knight can only let out a long, weary sigh. The noble then turns to Frim, begging her to stay for just one more day. But she questions his authority, wondering if she should obey him or her own boss. He grumbles in frustration, clearly annoyed that Duggan is getting all the attention. And with that, her work at the palace is officially extended. The bald knight explains that the Red Dragon Knights are gathering troops from all over the country. Frim realizes that leaving one area uncleaned is a political move to avoid making the knights look bad. She accepts the situation, though she admits she's starting to miss everyone back home. Figuring one more day won't hurt, she quickly drifts off to sleep. But her rest is suddenly disturbed by a strange noise. Her eyes fly open as she's jolted awake in the middle of the night. She senses multiple figures standing in the darkness of her room. Her first instinct is to get up and run, to escape before she's caught. But a familiar face suddenly looms over her, his expression intense, and with a jolt she realizes that this is all just a dream. The dream then shifts to a long, dark stone corridor, where the mysterious young man, Komu, seems to be completely lost. He runs his hand along the wall, trying to find a way out. A look of dawning panic spreads across his face as he realizes he's trapped. The dream shifts again, this time to an old man asking Komu if he's in love. Komu looks on, completely caught off guard by the question. The old man teases him, saying it's about time he started noticing girls. But Komu explains that something about the girl felt familiar, like he'd seen her before. He asks the old man if he can try something, a way to confirm his suspicions. He closes his eyes, calling on a spirit to show him a memory. His mind drifts back, searching for a connection. And a memory surfaces of a woman sitting by a window, a cloaked man at her side. He recalls this was right after he made his contract with a spirit. The two were his childhood guardians, a couple who used water magic and were like family to him. He remembers how they used to play together, wondering how he could have forgotten her. His father had explained that after his mother was poisoned, they sought a spirit's protection for their child. But the spirit was one of darkness, filling him with a deep sense of unease. The young Komu was warned that he couldn't take responsibility for what might happen, but his father was resolute, declaring it was his duty as a parent to protect his child. He then made one final request, to give the girl a name, and the memory hits Komu with the force of a revelation. He wonders if Frim could possibly be the child from all those years ago. He recalls hearing that all the water families had met a tragic end, never imagining she could have survived. The old man asks if he's found his answer, and Komu confirms that he has. He smiles, looking forward to seeing the look on her face when they finally meet again. But back in the present, Komu is fast asleep in his bed. A dark, shadowy figure suddenly looms over his sleeping form. The intruder raises a weapon, ready to strike him down in his sleep. But in that instant, Komu's eyes fly open in alarm. He throws himself to the side just as the weapon crashes down where his head was. He looks up, realizing with a jolt that an assassin almost took his life. The attacker lunges again, giving him no time to recover. But the cloaked figure suddenly recoils, clutching his head in pain. Komu shouts for help, identifying the man as an intruder. Komu shouts in alarm, trying to identify the attacker. The assassin realizes with a jolt that he's been poisoned. Just then, a woman in a maid's uniform appears, urging the assassin to finish the job. Komu looks back, wondering if the assassin used magic to disguise himself as a maid. With no time to think, he grabs the nearest object he can find, a heavy vase. He hurls it at the charging woman in a desperate attempt to defend himself, but a guard suddenly appears, slicing the vase clean in half with his sword. The projectile shatters into pieces on the floor. Komu shouts that he heard a noise from the room below, trying to create a distraction. But when he looks up, the intruders have already vanished, and he orders the guards to find them. The dream shifts to a memory, where a younger Komu looks on in sheer panic. He covers his mouth, trying to hold back a cry of despair. His foot slips on the blood-soaked floor of the palace. He looks back at the carnage, his mind reeling from the violence. He remembers confronting his uncle, asking if the throne was worth all this bloodshed. The war for succession had cost him everything he held dear. His uncle's illness, the nobles' greed, and foreign interference had plunged the kingdom into chaos. Even spirits and dragons were drawn into the conflict, bringing misery to all. And now he wonders how he, of all people, ended up as the king. He recalls pleading with his spirit, asking what its true nature even was. But the spirit offers no answer to his desperate plea. He knows this country was built on a bond between humans and spirits, a tradition that has never changed. The king isn't chosen by blood or power, but by the one who receives the spirit's blessing, tasked with connecting the two worlds. And then, the day came when his father suddenly fell ill. The memory sends him running through the halls of his past. He finds his older brother behind bars, asking why he's been locked away. But his brother simply tells him to stay put, warning that he can't be involved in their conflict. Komu explodes in anger, unable to understand why his own family would be fighting. His brother calmly explains that he'll be cared for here, with no need to worry about food. He's told to just wait until the situation calms down, locked away for his own protection. His brother tells him that one day, he too will understand. But a young Komu can only plead for him not to go. His cries of anguish echo through the empty halls. Even now, walking through these dark corridors brings back the memories of that day. He remembers being granted the throne, all alone in the darkness, and how he was ultimately dragged into the very conflict he despised. He hates the fighting, the factions, and the spirits that cost his brothers their lives, because he never ever wanted to become the king. The memory shifts as he realizes he's been poisoned, a gift from his own uncle. With his head pounding, he knows he has to escape before it's too late. He thinks he's found the exit, a way out of this dark maze. He pulls himself up through a hatch in the floor, his body weak from the poison. He emerges, bruised and exhausted, into an unfamiliar room. He recognizes the place as the cleaning management hut he saw earlier, but his only thought is to get out of here before his pursuers find him. He makes his way to the door, his hand reaching for the handle. But as he pushes, he realizes with a jolt that it's locked from the outside. A powerful force from the other side sends him stumbling backward. Realizing that path is blocked, he knows he has to find another way out. But he can already hear them approaching, and knows he has nowhere left to run. He cautiously moves to the corner of the room, looking for a place to hide. But he freezes when he sees a small figure sleeping in the bed. It's Frim. She wakes with a start, screaming at the sight of the intruder, and he stares back in disbelief, realizing this is the very girl from his memories. The scene flashes back to the assassination attempt, as the attacker looks up in confusion. Komu, shrouded in darkness, strikes from above with deadly force. The maid accomplice screams for her partner, unaware of the danger lurking in the shadows. Komu then engages the woman, his expression a mask of pure determination. But the fight and the poison have taken their toll, leaving him panting for breath. He slumps to the floor, his attacker defeated but his own escape still uncertain. He struggles to stay conscious, the poison coursing through his veins. He slumps against the wall, completely exhausted from the fight. Frim realizes with a jolt that this is no dream. She wonders if the man before her is some kind of ghost. But his weak laugh snaps her back to reality. He looks up, confirming that her name is indeed Frim. She rushes to his side, asking if he's hurt, but he just asks if she's sleep-talking. He looks around, trying to get his bearings in the unfamiliar room. She explains that she's just here for work, her main concern being his well-being. But he realizes he's been poisoned and needs a place where no one will find him. She tells him it's poison, not a wound, and quickly offers him some of her water. Her first thought is to check his wounds and stop the bleeding. She remembers the dagger Duggan gave her, grateful for his foresight. She sees the deep gash on his leg, realizing she has to clean it immediately. She gives him a handkerchief to bite down on, warning him that this is going to hurt. Taking a deep breath, she steels herself for what comes next. She focuses all of her concentration, ready to unleash her magic. He has no idea what's happening, but he knows his life is in her hands. And she realizes that in this moment, she's the only one who can save him. With the makeshift gag in place, she prepares to begin the painful process. She knows that no matter what, she has to save him. She commands the water to appear, focusing it on his wound. Komu grits his teeth, the pain almost unbearable. She tells him to endure it, explaining that she's trying to dilute the poison. A memory from her past life flashes in her mind, of a rusty nail and a hospital visit. With the wound cleaned, she tells him to hold on while she goes to get help. But as she turns to leave, a sudden doubt stops her in her tracks. She wonders if it's really a good idea to save this man. After all, he was supposed to have been punished and could be a dangerous criminal on the run. But his pleading eyes seem to tell her that abandoning him would be the far greater mistake. She steels her resolve, declaring that she can't just let him die. But her thoughts are cut short by a sudden, terrifying realization. The entire hut is on fire, and the heat is finally breaking through her adrenaline. Outside, one of the assassins wonders what's become of his partner. He's stunned to see Frim dragging the wounded Komu from the flames. Mistaking him for help, she tries to use her magic to put out the fire. But her plea is met with a powerful blast of water that sends her flying. The assassin stands over her, trying to figure out who this strange child is. He gives her a cold, final warning to leave this place at once. But Frim realizes he must be the one who set the fire and that he's here to finish the job. She looks up, demanding to know what he plans to do with Komu. The assassin declares that outsiders have no place interfering in his business. But Frim unleashes her own magic, creating a powerful defensive barrier. The two blasts of water collide with incredible force. The assassin is stunned by her unexpected power. He offers her one final warning, not knowing who he's dealing with. He tells her to hand over the man, and he'll let her live. But Frim knows there's no guarantee he'll keep his word. And she remembers that his last attack was meant to be a killing blow. The assassin's patience has run out, and he tells her to leave. But before he can finish, a concentrated blast of water hits him square in the face. The sheer force of the attack sends him flying backward onto the stone courtyard. Frim panics, realizing she needs to put out the fire before it spreads. But she's also terrified, knowing she had no choice but to fight back. Suddenly, a swift kick from the side catches her completely off guard. The blow sends her sprawling to the ground, stunned and disoriented. The assassin is surprised she's still alive, admitting he didn't want to harm a child. But his mercy has run out, and he prepares to end this once and for all, unleashing another powerful torrent of water directly at her. But just as the blast is about to hit, Komu reaches out, trying to intervene. The powerful torrent of water rushes forward, seemingly unstoppable. Frim grits her teeth, struggling against the immense pressure of the attack. She screams at him to let go, refusing to be defeated so easily. The assassin looks down in shock, realizing something is terribly wrong. He lets out a roar of frustration as his own magic turns against him. A powerful force sends him flying backward through the air. He lands on his feet and immediately draws a blade, ready for another round. Frim slumps to the ground, exhausted but protected by a watery barrier. The two of them face off in the now-soaked courtyard, the battle far from over. Frim pants for breath, her body trembling from the sheer exertion. The assassin stares back, demanding to know what kind of person she is.